What's going on, everybody? Eric here with 3 Crown Studio, and in this video I'm going to be talking about one of my all-time favorite things in the recording world, microphones. Welcome back, everybody, and if you're new to the channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button below, as well as the bell icon so that you can be notified whenever new videos go live. Big shout out to my man Ben Quinn for requesting this week's topic, and that topic, as I mentioned in the intro, is microphones. Now, if you're just getting into the world of recording, you've probably figured out that it's important to have at least one microphone. Microphones are what we use to capture sound, and if we can't capture sound, well then, we can't record. Now, with so many different microphones available on the market today, you might find yourself wondering, what's the difference between all of these, or what's the right one for me? So I'm going to take a couple of minutes just to go over the basics. I'm going to discuss the different common types of microphones, show you a few examples of each one, as well as discuss best practices on how you can use them to get a great professional sound. The first type of microphone I want to discuss with you is called a dynamic microphone. Now, a common example of dynamic mics would be the Shure SM57 like this, or a 58. These things are super popular. They've been around forever, and for good reason. I mean, they're relatively inexpensive. They're built like a tank. They work on vocals, they work on guitar amps, they work on drums, you name it. They can handle loud sound sources. There's no reason not to own one of these microphones. And to be honest with you, if I had to have just one mic, the SM57 would probably take the cake. Now, one of the great things about a dynamic microphone, other than the fact that they're relatively inexpensive and they're usually built quite rugged, is the fact that they're almost always cardioid, which means they have a directional pickup pattern. They also tend to capture things best when they're close to the sound source. Now, if you're trying to record vocals at home in a bedroom or in a family room, I would absolutely recommend that you get a dynamic microphone for your vocals. It's going to pick up that vocal really well, and it's going to reject just about everything else. The next common type of microphone that I want to talk about is called a condenser mic. Condenser microphones come in a lot of different shapes, sizes, pickup patterns, and they're often built for a specific purpose. One of the first most common types of condenser microphone would be what's called a large diaphragm condenser. Now, one of my personal favorites when it comes to a large diaphragm condenser is this guy here, the CharterOak E700. The reason why I like this one so much is it actually allows you to choose between different pickup patterns. So you can have it set to cardioid, which means it's directional. It picks up just what's right in front of it. You can set it to figure of 8, which means that it picks up from the back and the front. And you can also set it to omnidirectional, which means it picks up from all different directions. So that makes this an extremely versatile microphone that I can use in a lot of different situations. The next common type of condenser microphone would be a small diaphragm condenser. They usually look something like this. A lot of times they're referred to as pencil condensers, and they're usually great for drum overheads, snare drums, acoustic string instruments. They're really great at picking up details in the high and mid frequencies, and they're relatively small in size, which makes them easy to position even when you're working within a tight spot. If you're capturing sound for video, then you're most likely going to be using something like this. This is a shotgun microphone. This particular one is a Sennheiser MKE600, and it's the microphone I'm using right now to capture sound for this video. Shotgun mics are a small diaphragm condenser with a design that is super or hypercardioid, which means they have a really tight pickup pattern and they can pick up dialogue and sounds from a greater distance away, which is good for film because you can keep the microphone outside of the shot of the camera so you can't see it, but still capture a really good sound. So some of the main differences between condenser and dynamic microphones is that dynamic microphones tend to work better when they're very close to the sound source. They like to have the sound right in front of them, and they're not as sensitive to picking up sounds that are further away. Condenser microphones, however, are much more sensitive. They will capture a higher level of detail, but they're sensitive to sounds both close and far. So if you don't want to capture things that are further away from the mic, a condenser might not be a great choice. This is why earlier I recommended that if you're in a home environment where the room is not acoustically treated to sound good, that you go with a dynamic microphone. Another main difference is that condenser microphones require an external power source. This is usually called phantom power, or you might see it as a 48-volt button on your microphone preamp or your interface. This power is supplied through the microphone cable to the mic, and without it, the microphone will not function. Now, a dynamic microphone does not require this, so you can plug it into any mic preamp, turn it up, and you're good to go. The last type of microphone that I want to discuss is called a ribbon mic, like this. This is a Royer R121, and it's one of my absolute favorites. Now, ribbon microphones are actually technically a dynamic microphone. However, I put them in a category of their own because they're very different than most traditional dynamic mics. A typical dynamic microphone, like an SM57 or 58, uses a round metal diaphragm which vibrates and picks up the sound. Now, a ribbon microphone uses a thin corrugated strip of metal that's stretched between 2 points, and that metal ribbon vibrates and picks up sound. So while a ribbon microphone is still technically a dynamic mic, the fact that it's a totally different style of diaphragm completely changes the way the microphone reacts. The first big difference is that a typical dynamic microphone usually has a cardioid pickup pattern like we discussed earlier. It's directional, whereas a ribbon microphone is always going to be a figure of 8 pickup pattern, which means that it picks up from the front as well as the back of the microphone. The second big difference is that ribbon microphones have a completely different sonic characteristic versus a traditional dynamic microphone or a condenser microphone. They tend to have a nice, smooth roll-off on the top end, the high frequencies, which can be really good if you're trying to capture a sound source that sounds a bit harsh. A really great example is using these for drum overheads so that you can get a nice natural sound with the cymbals and not get that sizzly, harsh high end. Ribbon microphones are also phenomenal on guitar amps, especially if you want to crank that amp up and get a good distorted sound, but not have the harsh top end that can come as a result. So as I stated in the beginning of this video, microphones are absolutely one of my favorite tools in the studio, and I could talk about them for days. But for this video, I just wanted to cover the basics and get you started. If you guys want to continue the conversation, or if you have any questions at all, please go ahead and leave them down in the comments section below, and I'll absolutely get back to you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.